All right, we're back. Terry and Gary's Low Expectations podcast. We have today the franchise, Shane Douglas. How you doing, Shane?
What's up, guys?
Hey, thanks for coming on the show. Usually, what I'll do is I'll open it. Well, Gary will open it up. They'll start sharing, and then I'll start the interview off and start talking to you about just your wrestling, how you got started, simple things. Obviously, you're still very active. A lot of I see on all the shows. I've actually wrestled with you a lot of indie shows, a lot of promotions around the country, and even around the world. But seminars you do, training, and all that stuff, passing on the knowledge. But now you started. This is one of the stories that I love the best. Is how you got hooked on wrestling. Your first experience seeing it on TV. Wasn't it a steel cage? And the guy took a head of lettuce or a cabbage and ran it across.
Yeah, sure did. I had watched professional wrestling before that.
Okay.
A show called Studio Wrestling when I was 7, 8 years old out of Pittsburgh. But when I was 13, my dad got cable, one of the first in the area to get cable television. That night, I didn't even know my dad liked professional wrestling. And that night, he saw on the TV guide that it was on. So we turned on the Saturday night at midnight show, the WOR show. And the very first segment was Superstar Billy Graham with the Grand Wizard talking, doing a promo for an upcoming match against Bruno Sammartino. And at the very last part of it, he said, "Sammartino, what I'm going to do to you?" And he took that head of cabbage and grated it on the steel cage. I should have used that at some point, but it was a great spot.
Right. And you were hooked right there. You're like, "Oh man, I've got to see this." Yeah.
So, well, I was a big comic book mark too when I was a kid. So, to me, all of a sudden, this is like a comic book come to life. This Superstar had those muscles and the tan and the bleach blonde hair and the tie-dyed tights and the gift of gab. It was Superman come to life. Yeah,
it's funny because a lot of people actually mirrored themselves off of Superstar Billy Graham, and openly admit, Hulk Hogan and others. But like Jesse Ventura said, with the blonde hair and the being flamboyant and all that stuff. And so did you ever get to work with Superstar or no?
And I was on shows with him, never worked with him when he was still active in the ring and I was coming into the business. I was the snot-nosed kid that was on the opening match if I was lucky. But I got to tell you, from the first moment I ever met Billy, he was just a really sweet guy. Really friendly and easy to talk to. And some of the guys were, you're the young kid and the snot-nosed kid. They wouldn't talk to you or give you like a second of their time. Billy was never like that. He was very first time I met him in Revere, Massachusetts. He and I got a hotel room together that night, and actually, I didn't have a room, and he let me stay in his room with him, and just tell you, I think in our business, what kind of guy he is.
Yeah, for sure. Gary, do you have some questions you want to roll off?
Yeah, well, you talked about comic books. What's your favorite superhero?
My favorite superhero comic books was Thor.
Thor?
Yeah.
Really?
You got that kind of Thor look.
What's that?
You had that kind of Thor look to you.
Well, I'm of Swedish and German descent, so a little bit of. I think as a kid, though, like when I was first reading it, it was a little bit different than just a guy and like a Batman or whatever. There was something more about that character, and the fact that I was big into history, and Thor is a legendary character in mythology. There was a lot more to it to me, a lot more to sink your teeth into.
What kind of Greek mythology god would Terry be if he was one?
Hey, answer carefully, okay?
Look at the guns on that man.
I've been training. What who was your favorite comic book? Gary just asked that. If you had to choose from, I just want you to say one of these. If you had to choose from Batman, Spider-Man, or Superman, who would it be?
Probably Spider-Man.
Okay.
A normal guy that sort of just stumbles on to, and the original, long before the movie, Spider-Man was not endowed with the web slingers and stuff. He had mechanicals, so it was sort of like, hey, if he could do it, maybe somebody else could, right?
Right. Now, between Batman and Superman.
Batman
He's
and
trying to get you to say
Superman,
his favorite.
I would say Superman.
Oh man.
All right, between Batman and Batman.
Yeah, between Batman and Batman. There we go.
There you go, Terry.
I would take Batman every day.
Okay, there you go.
I'll
No,
take
my
the
buddy, what's that?
The Dark Knight.
Oh yeah. No, my buddy, he loves Superman, and he'd always tell me Batman's just a rich guy, this and that, and he's not a real superhero. And then he was up here training, and long story short, I would get like action figures of Superman, and I'd hang them from the chandelier and stuff, and I'd have like the chair laying on him, and he's like, that wouldn't hurt Superman because he's a superhero and all that stuff. Yeah, so he'd come home, and all he would see is this action figure of Superman just pummeled somehow. Yeah, so no, but I love Batman. So now when did you get into wrestling? What year? You were in NWA, right?
Yeah.
That's where you first got your break. You got your first break in NWA, right?
Well, the first break was UWF.
Okay.
Bill Watts' territory. That was 1986.
Okay.
But I'd started training with Dominic in 1982 and met him in 1978. That's how I met Dominic. Was my friends and I had built a ring. Long story short, we'd seen a kid got his picture in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated. He had built this really pathetic homemade ring. And we were all pretty handy in shop class and stuff. Though we could build a better one than that. Went to the junkyard, stole a bunch of stuff, and built a pretty nice little ring. And after we built it and fooled around for a few weeks, we thought, what else can we do with it? Back then, they were asking people to do backyard carnivals for Muscular Dystrophy Association. Mm-hmm. And so we put on a backyard, probably the first ever backyard wrestling show. And we had to go meet with a woman named Angeline Paparella. I love to mention her name because she's long since passed, but what an unbelievably courageous woman this lady was. She was the local chairperson of the MDA chapter. She was a nurse who had contracted adult onset muscular dystrophy, completely immobile. She could move a few fingers. Mm-hmm. And we went to meet with her, and I think she was probably taken back by these young punks that wanted to raise money, for muscular dystrophy. And she called me one day and she said, there's a wrestler that lives locally. It's an Italian guy. Well, of course we knew Bruno, right? And I said, Bruno. Right. And she said, no, not Bruno Sammartino. And she fumbled with the name. She said, it's something like Dominuni, and I said, Dominic DiNucci. He was the tag champ at the time. Right. I had no idea he even lived in the Pittsburgh area, let alone my neighborhood. And so she connected us up. And that's how I ended up meeting Dominic and remain friends with him to this day.
Yeah. You actually, wasn't he in Detroit just within about a year and a half? You guys came up. He did an autograph signing, and and what a legend. Yeah, I've yet to meet him, so we might bring him up to Monroe and for a signing.
You've never met Dominic?
Never.
Really?
That's
crazy. Many shows we've been on.
Right. And I found out after he was here. I would have came up. Yeah. So, but now when you started in WCW or NWA, you tagged with what was your guys' name?
When I first went to the NWA, they put me and Ricky Santana together just as on the Crockett Cup thing. But then Johnny Ace and I were put together later, and it was called the Dynamic Dudes.
Okay, now with the skateboards, right?
Yes, the one that I couldn't ride.
Yeah. Did you ever try and fall down, like at a live event or something?
When we first got it, we were living at the Ramada out by the Atlanta airport, and the Ramada had this long sloping parking lot in the back.
I remember.
So you know what I'm talking about, right?
So
I figured I could ride down there, and I made it about 2/3 of the way down. There was a speed bump. I flew about 6-7 feet in the air and came down, almost busted my elbow up. That's the last time I'm riding that bastard.
Right. Gary still rides a skateboard around the neighborhood. His old Vision skateboard.
I sit on it, you pull me around.
Right.
I kill myself.
Right.
So were you guys together in ECW then at the same time?
99. Yeah.
So what was that like?
He was an asshole to me. Yeah, kind of like how you are to me, Gary.
Well, maybe deserve it. I mean,
there you go. No, yeah, we right when I was starting, you had came back from weren't you in WCW?
I
Or
was,
before
yes,
you went to WCW?
left to go to WCW. I was in WWF in '95 and then came back in '96.
Right. And then I think right before you went back to WCW, I think we crossed paths or something. That's what it was. Yeah. I had started when you were heading out. I remember we were somewhere in Pennsylvania. I wanted. It was. You remember that building they filmed? This is what I was told. They filmed the Goon, or not the Goon, but that hockey movie, The Two Brothers.
Yeah. Oh, that was in. Yeah, that's not Indiana. Johnstown.
Yes. Yeah, that was the first. Yeah, that was the first time I had met you, and it was the night The Rock. It was in '99. The night The Rock was on Saturday Night Live. The first time he hosted. Yeah, I got a wicked. Yeah, you were in a tag match. I think you teamed with Dreamer. Yeah, in the main event, and you had a cast on. You came back early or something. Yeah, I think you had elbow surgery. That's what it was. Yeah.
Well, there was. I remember also there was an early building. You got it better than me because I thought the first time I'd met you, there was a building. It was, as I remember, it was like a dark brick building. It was sort of a round building, but not an arena. And I saw you standing over in the dressing room, and your thick build and everything. And you were real quiet. And I came over and started talking to you, but I can't remember. For some reason, I thought it was in Michigan somewhere.
Oh, it wasn't in Grand Rapids. Was it Lansing?
It might have been Lansing.
Yeah, I think it was Lansing because Grand Rapids, I think it was the Welch Center. But I think that's since gone. Yeah, it probably was Lansing then. So, and then that was the first time. I thought it was Johnstown that we met for the first time.
Yeah, you may be right. It was probably that was probably like 6-8 months later before I would even stop to talk to you.
Oh, well, I traveled with Sabu, and he didn't talk to me for the first 6 months either. So,
hey, funny story about Sabu, and you'll totally understand it, right? So, when I first met him in ECW, I mean, I was astounded the first time seeing him do the stuff he could do, like, just wow. And I would call him by his name, and I could tell there was like for a good year and a half where like he was really standoffish with me, and I finally went up to him and I said, is there heat between us? Is there a problem? And he said, no. He said, and how Sabu is as verbose as Sabu isn't, right? And I finally weaned it out of him. He said, my name's Sabu. He didn't want me calling him, like from where I came up in the business, you call somebody their real name. And after that, I called him Sabu. We always got along great.
Yeah. For some reason, he told me he hates that name. That's why he just hated that name. Yeah. And then it's funny because he wouldn't let anybody call me Terry.
Yeah, right.
His name's Rhino. Yeah, because it didn't bother me. But I also came up when you called everybody, or maybe it was because of Sabu, but I called everybody their work name. And it ended up coming to bite me in my ass later down the road, not knowing the boy's real name. But I just learned everybody's real name. I'll tell you the quick story, and Gary's got some questions for you. But James Storm's brother is a cop, and we're down in Tennessee, and I was driving James Storm's car, and he pulled me over, and his brother pulled me. I didn't know it was his brother, the cop. He's like, we've got reports this car's running drugs through this neighborhood, and I'm just like, I can't throw James under the bus. He goes, whose car is it again? I go, that guy. He goes, what's his name? I go, oh shit, I don't know. He goes, so let me get this straight. You're driving a vehicle and you don't even know the owner's name. I go, he's right there. His name's James. I don't know his last name. I know his wrestling last name is Storm. Yeah. And this is before you could just Google someone, right? And anyway, I'm sure they had his Wikipedia page up, but this was like 07, 08 or 09. Yeah. And come to find out, James jumps out of the car and grabs his brother. I'm like, oh, we're going to jail, man. This is bad news. Yeah, they ribbed me. But yeah, Billy Gunn was there too. So, but yeah. But anyways,
Great
Gary.
rib.
Yeah, right. So, Gary, what do you got, brother?
Brad Rasky wants to know any memories of working with Johnny Ace and the Dynamic Dudes.
Yeah, Johnny and I, we got along great. Just as traveling partners, being on the road with somebody that long back then, 300 plus days a year can be tough if you don't get along. And Johnny and I got along great, although we were very different personalities. Johnny wanted to stay up all night and go out and carouse, and I was always wanting to get back to the room to be able to get up early to get a workout before we had to get on the road. Johnny, it was sort of funny because when I look at the Midnight Express, and you see that like Bobby Eaton's like the workhorse in that team, right? Stan brings a ton of charisma and all the rest. But Johnny, like when we would work with other people would come to me and they would say, okay, you stay in the ring. And so like I was ended up having to work like 2/3 of the match. And, Johnny was doing his stuff. And, we always got along great. The problem for us was when they first put us together, little trivia fact about the team, we had debuted on the Hostile City Showdown the night that Terry Funk Pal drove Flair through the table.
Right.
In Nashville. We had debuted that night working with the Samoan SWAT team. And it was, to this day, I can't remember. It was either Johnny and Shane, the new generation, or the next generation. So the next morning, we get in the van to go to the airport, and Eddie Gilbert. Did you ever know Eddie?
No, I'd never met him. No.
He was, funny guy, but had this real wry sense of humor. And so he's sitting in the front seat of the van, and he said, "Have you guys heard your new name yet?" And I said, and I'm thinking, we've already been on TV last night, pay-per-view, you can't change our name now. Dumb me. And so he's sitting there and he said, your new name is the Dynamic Dudes. He said Jim Hurt had commissioned some vocabulary thing out of California. The top two words were Dynamic and Dude. I guess the Dingalings must have been like the third one name on that list. But so I thought it's a rib, right? So I said, okay, yeah, bullshit, Eddie. And he turned around and gave me that real serious Eddie Gilbert look, and I thought, oh, he is serious. So, from that point forward, he got heat with me, right? Because the name sounded just so uncool, and the funny thing with the gimmick itself was neither Johnny and I were skateboarders. Johnny could at least ride his. I didn't. But there was a whole, as I would come to find out, subculture of skaters, right? People that rode skateboards and had their own lingo, like we do in our business, right? They have their own lingo. And we went to some place like San Francisco or San Diego, one of those California towns. And some kid came up to the table and started to be like somebody talking carny to us,
Right.
I didn't have a clue what this guy was saying, neither did Johnny. And, so in that 1 second, they realized it was just a phony bullshit wrestling thing,
Right.
But yeah, Johnny and I got along great. And, it was, I think, more encumbered by the politics that was WCW at that time than anything else.
Yeah. No, I actually like the name, and the whole skateboard.
It sounds like Batman and Robin, the dynamic duo. That's why you like it.
Right.
Yeah. But he likes Batman too.
Now you went right from there. You worked with New York for a little bit, WWF, and didn't you go home? Didn't you have you went off the road for a little time, and then you went because you were a teacher.
Yeah, in 1991, I left WCW because of all that politics, and went to the WWF in 1990. No guarantee, no spot. It was just an opportunity.
Right.
And at that stage of my career, I was still happy with that. I was fine, just to, happy to just be getting the opportunity, and went up and was there most of 90, and right at the beginning of 91, like January of 91, my dad, who would subsequently pass away in 1993, had come down with stage 4 emphysema and was living alone and couldn't at the time. So I remember going and talking to Vince. I believe it was Niagara Falls. And I, told him, think I'm going to get heat for this, right? And we had probably the best conversation I ever had with Vince. And he said, family comes first. You've been a great employee. Doors always open. And and I left. I went home to, of course I had to work at the time. So a mutual friend of my ex-wife and I was a teacher in what's called the Beaver County, was then the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit. It's now defunct because the special ed classes have all been absorbed into the districts. But it was the agency that spearheaded all the special education classes in the county. They had this emotional support classroom that nobody wanted. And I didn't care. I said, I'll take it. And that was my first step back into teaching, and taught 2 years there for them. And then in 93 went and taught 93, 4, and 5 in Beaver, which is where I was a history teacher. And right interim to that was me and Ricky Steamboat in WCW. Okay.
Now, Gary, do you have any other questions?
Can you imagine the franchise being your history teacher? Who was the first president? Abe Lincoln throws him through a damn table. No.
One time, when I had one of those shoulder surgeries, for God knows what injury, and I was in one of those. It was my right arm, so I'm in one of those big slinging swaths, right, and tons of pain. So I walk in and the kids think like the day's off, right? And, they're acting up a little bit and everything. And you can't write on the blackboard, Mr. Martin. So I picked the chalk up with my left hand and started writing with I'm ambidextrous, right?
Okay.
You've never seen a more disappointed classroom in all your life when I pulled out that gimmick right there. But I love teaching. I love history and I love teaching, and had, in fact, just ran in earlier today, when I first texted you, ran into one of my students from Western Beaver, which was 92.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Now, how's he doing? Was it a year?
Great.
Oh,
yeah, he's doing great. One of my former students from 93 or 4 is the local chairman of the Republican Party here in Beaver County. So, I've seen a lot of my kids, long since grow up and get out of school and go on and start their lives, and a lot of them become civic leaders around Beaver County. So it's pretty cool to watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's got to have a good feeling when they go on and and they're very good members of society and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
But now, so when did you start in ECW, and then tell us a little bit about the title and the NWA to the ECW and all that stuff?
Well, Eddie Gilbert plays into it again. Eddie Gilbert was booking the Eastern Championship Wrestling. Cool. And whenever I had left the road in 93 after they broke Ricky and I up, I was really focusing on getting full-time into teaching and staying in teaching. And really at that point, you guys both understand this, I had just gotten so fed up with the politics of the business. And
right.
So I said, like an alcoholic staying out of a bar, I'm staying away from it. And Eddie Gilbert called me, and I had a huge amount of respect for Eddie, not just because of what a great worker he was, but he had given me my first big break in the business. He kept calling me and offering me to come into this new company, Eastern Championship Wrestling. And I kept turning him down, thanking him, but turning him down and explaining why. And he kept calling and, sweetening the pot. And, like I said, Eddie, it's nothing about money. I said, I'm done with the business. And he said, how about if we make you the lead heel? And, I'd always said when I got into wrestling, I wanted to learn everything about it I could. I wanted to learn the writing. I wanted to learn how it was shot. I wanted to learn everything about it. And, from that time of the business, blonde hair, blue-eyed guys didn't get to be the lead heel, right? So I thought, well, that interested me, and I went in. And my first name, I don't know if you even know this, Rhino, my first wrestling name, gimmick name in ECW was the Fabulous One. Eddie being from Memphis, like the Fabulous Fargos. And it was maybe a month and a half in, he walked out one day. We're in the middle of a booking meeting, and he and Todd Gordon get up and they walk out. And about half hour later, Todd Gordon comes in and says, Eddie's done. Paul Heyman's the new booker. And that quick, and I never saw Eddie again. He would die after that in Puerto Rico, like a month or two later. But Paul came to me, and it was the first time in my career, what is a fabulous one, right? I mean, like, how do you be a fabulous one? It was so ill-defined that I really couldn't, it didn't offer me any direction. Paul came to me with the idea for the franchise. 93 was the first year the NFL was declaring a player as the franchise player. And, he said, I want to call you the franchise. And the only direction he gave me was, and I'll clean my language up here from what his real words were. He said, you're the captain of the football team who steals everybody's girlfriend and, has a good time. And I said, well, I know guys like that, right? So,
Right.
But it was the first time that it gave me, I could take all these ideas and focus them down like a laser beam into a very specific character. And later, though, like you said, how that would come to bite you in the ass, not knowing the guys' real names later. After like a year and a half of that, I was looking for some new parameters to the character, something to push the envelope a little bit. And Paul would never sit down with me and do any of that, So it sort of left it to me to do it in a way that was liberating, because it allowed me then to know, like I had, and I'm sure you did the same thing with your character, where it reached a point where I knew exactly what the franchise would or wouldn't do in any specific situation. I could think exactly in this guy's way of thinking, and it was liberating. It was, as from a creative standpoint, it was liberating because you could take it wherever you wanted to take it, but it had to make sense to you to make it make sense to the audience.
Right. So now, what? Gary, do you have a question?
I got lots of questions. So
okay. Go ahead.
Hey, we got a couple questions about you being an actor as well. They want to know about Wrestlers versus Zombies with Kurt Angle, Matt, and Reba Hardy.
What a great experience we had. I was approached I went to Bethany College for my undergraduate in West Virginia. And about a year before making that movie, maybe a year and a half, a fellow Bethanian who was apparently there at the same time I was there, a couple of years behind, I didn't know him at Bethany, contacted his name was Cody Knotts, with this idea of doing this movie. And he sent me the script, and the first thing that jumped out at me was the script had all the wrestlers' verbiage written in red. So I called him, and I'd never seen it. I called him and I said, why do you have this all written in red? Why is this written like this? He said, why? I can't tell Shane Douglas how to say that. That's just a nutshell what I want him to say. I want Shane Douglas to say that how Shane Douglas would say it, how Roddy Piper would say it, how Jim Duggan or Kurt Angle would say it. And so that gave me the impetus, like at least the thought to myself that this guy has enough respect for us that he's not going to come and tell us, say A, B, and C, even though the franchise character would never say that. And I'm the one that I was the conduit to putting us together with Roddy and Jim. And I think he contacted Kurt locally. And then, of course, Matt and Rebby and a whole bunch of local guys. And we went out and shot for about 3 weeks down in Parkersburg, West Virginia. Just had a really, really good time, doing a lot of fun. To me, in watching the movie now, in hindsight, obviously it's corny. It was never meant to be Gone with the Wind, right? But to see us making fun of our own characters in like a tongue-in-cheek way, I think is about as funny of a thing as you can see. Like Roddy Piper making fun of Roddy Piper is classic. To see a franchise making fun of himself is good stuff. And it's funny because how many fans I've heard. I always thought it would get panned and crushed, because it was again it was. But so many fans have come back. It's sort of like the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, right? It was so bad it was good, right? That you want to watch it. So, but a lot of learning experience too, because I helped produce that movie and was oversaw the stunt coordination and all of that. So it was a big learning experience and a lot of. I like being challenged by things that I have to work to learn, and that was a constant learning process.
Right. There you go, Patrick Mendez. You keep asking that question, so I had to get it out there. Another one from Heather Cottrell. What do you guys, for both of you, who was your favorite opponent that you guys have ever faced? Was there one guy that stuck out, or one guy that you'd like to wrestle, over and over again that you wrestled, or?
Yeah, Shane. I think we've wrestled more in the last 5 years. From like 2010 to 2005, and then we wrestled quite a bit after that, I'd like to say 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, you just wrestled Monroe.
Yeah, in a triple threat with DBA. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So
you know,
you don't
it's
have
one of
to
those
say
things.
me, Shane.
What's that?
You don't have to say me, but
No, I was going to say for any of the ECW guys, right? I mean, there's guys, and I'm sure you get this too, Rhino. Is there's some guy like me and Rick Steiner, we can't buy a good match. It's not that he's not trying. I wasn't trying. There was just something about our styles that didn't mesh well.
yeah,
But like I could go into the ring with a flu with you and have a night off.
yeah,
Same thing with Tommy Dreamer. Same thing with Raven, Sabu. I think there was for me anyway, a camaraderie in ECW that I'd never seen elsewhere or since. That sort of a respect amongst all the guys there that made working there so much easier because you knew nobody was going to be half-assing you or slacking off or taking it easy. Everybody worked their ass off there.
right. No, I agree with you. There's just a couple people, and it the match comes across good, but it's not good for you. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So I know what you're talking about. Did you say Rick or Scott Steiner?
Rick Steiner, and again, every time I've worked with, I've probably worked with him 10 times. It's not like he's not trying or I'm not trying. It's just for whatever reason, it feels like you're on two different train tracks.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, does it come across well? And it's just something it's in your guys' head that you just know that it's not meshing? Do you think it's trust? Do you think it's respect? Do you think it's styles?
Yeah, it comes across well, to the audience, but like it's kind of like you're dancing and you got two left feet on. Yeah. That's when I wrestle just only a couple people that happens with. Yeah, like in someone's career. Yeah. And then it's odd, it's weird. But I get exactly what you're saying. So
frustrating. I said it's not trying to put any heat on Rick, it's probably putting the heat on myself. I'm sure to the fans the match came across okay. But and the same thing, like on the flip side of that, I'm sure you have the same experience where you're in a match and at some point it just it goes to autopilot.
Right.
And it's just smooth sailing the rest of the year. It's almost like you could do no wrong when working with someone.
Right.
But so back to wrestling. Well, you've been successful everywhere you've been. You've had several championships. It says here that you were the first of 11 men to win a championship in all three major U.S. promotions in the 90s. So you're the first one to ever accomplish that. There's been 10 other guys after you. Can you guys name any of those 10?
I have no idea.
Jesus, no. Ron, you were the first person to do that, Rhino?
No, you were.
No, you were.
I was?
Yeah, you were.
Hey, we're glad we told you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. We should have sent them a card or a
certificate in the mail.
Right.
But no, it was Mick Foley.
Steve Austin?
Nope. Terry Funk. Chris Jericho. Chris Benoit. Eddie Guerrero. Perry Saturn. Dean Malenko. Raven. Lance Storm. And Chris Candido. Those are the 10 guys that after you won 3 championships in all 3 major promotions in the 90s. But you were the first one to do it.
Wow. That's a hell of a class to be involved with. The first couple names, were those all ECW names?
Mick Foley and Terry Funk, and then Chris Jericho were the first one.
Okay,
I don't know if they're listed in chronological order, but those are the ones they have listed in after you.
Wow. I was never even aware. I mean, I knew I had belts in all 3 places, but didn't know that I was the first to do it. Or
only 11 people in the 90s did it. So
that's crazy.
Which brings me to the next question. Brad Rasky wants to know if you have any Chris Candido. Am I saying his name right? Candido?
Yes.
Candido stories.
Oh man, a million of them. For me and Chris and Bam Bam, how do I say it? I always felt like Bam Bam was my big brother because he was so much bigger and a little bit older. And Chris was like my little brother, and Chris has that little brother type personality. Mm-hmm. The 3 of us got along, and Francine and Tammy. When we were on the road together, we had a blast on the road. I mean, there was never any kind of tension or problem. We all got along great, which made going to work a lot of fun and less hassle. But Chris, when it's not a funny story, but I think it sort of encapsulates Chris. He had gone through this period where for years I was scared to death I was going to get a phone call that something happened to Chris, because if you remember back in the 90s, wrestlers were dropping like flies. And it came to the point where TNA wanted to hire him. And I knew if I called Chris, he would tell me whatever he had to tell me to get hired. So I said, fly me to New Jersey and I'll just show up at his house one day without him knowing. So I did. I went and knocked on his door 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he opened the door and he goes, Jesus Christ, Franchise, what are you doing here? But I could see he was in great shape, completely clear-eyed, which, if he was still pilling up or whatever, he wouldn't have been at that time of day. I went straight back to the office and said, hire him. Because Candido, healthy, is just wind him up and let him go. And when we brought him in, he was doing the managing thing for the Naturals. And in a match, just a completely fluke thing. Nobody screwed up. It was just one of those crazy things that happens in the ring. It was a tag match. I forget who Sonny Siaki's partner was, but anyway, Chris had rolled into the ring after it was like going to a four-way, and Sonny, went to get heat on Sonny. Sonny reversed it and gave him a leg lariat and turned just the way he came down, landed on Chris's leg. And as soon as he hit his leg, you could just see Chris's foot flopping. I mean, it was a fib fracture instantly. And, we stopped it immediately, got down there, got him within 15 minutes, he was on his way to the hospital. And had to have, I think, 7 plates and 21 screws. It was a pretty significant break. And I'd spoken to him. He was in the hospital for 3 days. I'd spoken to him every day down there and then had to fly home. Everything was great. That Wednesday, I get a phone call. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday. I get a phone call from what I thought was Tammy. Sounded exactly like Tammy. And I answered the phone. It was when we were planning the Hardcore Homecoming shows. Right. I'm sorry, not from Tammy, from Tommy Dreamer first. And, Tommy and I were talking to each other like this, to try to keep from double booking stuff. And I answered the phone and he was crying. And I said, I thought something had happened to his grandfather who had died a short time later. And he said, can you tell me if Chris is okay? I said, oh, yeah, he broke his leg pretty badly, but yeah, he's fine. He said, no, not his leg. I heard he died. Yeah. And it knocked me back for a second. I said, I'll call you right back. And I hung up and I called Tammy and she answered on the first ring. Hello? Completely normal. So I breathed. I thought just some kind of, internet story or something. And I said, Tammy, this is Shane. Is Chris okay? And she said, oh, who is this? I said, it's Shane, Tammy. Is Chris okay? She goes, oh, well, who is it again? I said, Tammy, it's Shane Douglas. She goes, oh, this isn't Tammy, it's her sister. And I forgive me, I don't know, I can't remember her sister's name, but if you've ever spoken to her on the phone, she sounds exactly like Tammy. Right. And she said, very matter-of-factly, she said, Chris was eating a bowl of soup tonight at 7:30. He looked up and collapsed in his soup and died 35 minutes later. Wow. And it was like the whole room spun on me. I mean, I couldn't even begin to wrap my brain around that. And like I told you at the outset of the story, for years I had expected that phone call on Chris. He finally gets cleaned up in phenomenal shape. How many broken bones have we all had in our careers? And then to have something like that happen, it just seems, so ironic and so cruel. But for those of us that knew him, knew what a funny guy he was. Chris loved to do what he called haha in the ring. Right. And I hated haha, right? Because I was always the guy going for the heat. Right. And he asked me one day if he could use Francine in his match. I think this was in Indiana, Pennsylvania. I said, sure. So I'm in the back watching, and he's working with Lance Storm, and they do the spot where, he's running from Lance, drops out of the ring, goes around. They pass Francine. She rolls into the ring to get out of their way. Chris jumps in the ring and stops to look back, and as Lance is stepping through the ropes to come after him, Chris turns around and runs into Francine and takes a bump off of her. Chris, who's 230 pounds of muscle, and Francine is all of about 103 pounds soaking wet. Yeah. And I was in the back screaming my head over the ring, what the, but that was Chris. And, Never do a sunset flip with Chris Candido. Because,
why is that?
Because first of all, he has the hairiest asshole you've ever seen on a human being, and he always does the tights pull down thing, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Chris miss them both. Him and Bam Bam, both great guys.
Yeah.
Sharing that. You got anything else, Terry? I got more questions. I can go all day.
Yeah. Let's shoot a couple good questions. I know we're hitting the 40-minute mark. We don't want to take too much more of his time. But go ahead.
All right, Mary Kate Anthony asked, how important would you say working with Sherry Martel was in the early stages of the franchise character's career?
Incredibly. First of all, what's up, Mary Kate? Incredibly, because, Sherry was one of those people. At that time, she had worked with, I think, Shawn Michaels and
Michael Mann.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the top people, and Sherry was just a sweetheart and just knew so much about our business. And I had never worked with a valet or a manager. So in creating that character, like I said earlier, I had a good understanding of where to take that character. But to have somebody like Sherry at ringside, she would, if you go back and listen closely, Ron and Charlie were pretty good at editing. I'm sure you'll hear her calling stuff in, not necessarily the match, but just like, get some heat or, take a break or little things like that. So she was incredibly helpful with me in getting that character defined the way to what it would become. The night that me and Sabu and Terry Funk did the three-way dance, it was the first time I'd ever been in a three-way dance. And like we had said earlier about that, reaching that point where you hit like that autopilot, that match never reached it. To me, it did. It just felt so cattywampus, piece. It didn't feel like it ever hit a stride. And I was, at the end, remember how hot the arena was. I'm laying there blown up. And after the match is done in 16 minutes, and I'm laying under the bottom rope, and I'm pissed at myself because I'm thinking, shit, I could have done this, I could have done that. And I hear Sherry going, "Oh my God, look at these people!" And I look out, and they're giving us a standing ovation. And at that moment, I'm thinking, man, they're just being polite, right? Because that match, to me, I thought it stunk. And it wasn't till later I went back and watched the match and realized just what an amazing match it was. The way Paul had it segmented from Sabu in and then Funk out, and it just kept everything moving. And all prop, nothing against Sabu or me. Terry Funk was the engine that made that match work. We were basically following his lead. But to answer Mary Kate's question, Sherry Martel was unbelievably huge asset to me at that point, and helping me know when to speed up and slow down and turn to the audience. A lot of that came from Sherry.
That's awesome. And we got our brain jerk, our brother podcast over there in Michigan. He wants to know, what's your favorite match you witnessed or been a part of? Is there one match that stood out above the rest that you witnessed or been a part of?
Yeah, when I was a kid, went to the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, and my dad would take me, and there Sergeant Slaughter was wrestling Pat Patterson in a boot camp match.
Oh,
and I'm sure these are probably on YouTube, at least a couple of them. It's, when I talk about like those old timers like Bruno and Pat Patterson and those guys, by today's standards, the fan watching today and all the acrobatics and stuff would think that it's mundane in comparison. But go back, I'm sure everything's on YouTube today, right? Go back and watch the build up to those matches. It all started with nobody could break the Cobra Clutch. Mm-hmm. And Patterson finally breaks it. Of course, the heel says it didn't. He slipped or whatever. and they go into these matches, and the way they took that to set those matches up on the road was they had one of those aluminum pitchers of water, and Slaughter picked it up and hit Pat Patterson over the head and dented the thing. Years later, whenever I met Pat Patterson, I asked him, I said, was that like a gimmick, like a fake pitcher or something? He said, no, it was a real pitcher. And he said, it hurt like hell. And it's the kind of stuff that, you took away from those guys and what they were willing to put into it. But man, they tore the Pittsburgh Civic Arena down, fought what would later become much like an ECW match, right? Fought all over the building, up into the stands, and went like an hour. it was an incredible match. It seared into my brain today.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions we got.
What's that?
That's all the questions we got. But I did want to. Last week we had DDP on, and we never got a chance to talk about Brodie Lee. I just want to know, with his passing, if you guys have any Brodie Lee stories.
Shane?
I'd only met him one time. Seemed like an incredible young guy. I had seen, I don't watch a lot today, but the stuff that I had seen of him, it looked to me like he was finally going to start getting that push that he seemed to deserve. And when I heard one of my other podcast partners texted or called and told me what happened, I was like, well, no, that can't be right. And is there any outcome? As all I heard was that there was some lung-related issue.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he was a great guy. Had a lot of success in like New York with the Wyatt family.
Yeah.
I had worked with him actually in the ECW arena.
Really?
It was for Jersey All Pro, and the first time I ever watched him wrestle, he wrestled Michael Elgin up in it was in Montreal, I think, it was just south of Montreal, and I'm like, wow, because I worked with Elgin before.
Sure.
And I'm like, wow, I was blown away. And, and then probably about a year later, if that, he was in WWE and then the Wyatt family. And I'm like, oh, cool, probably a little after a year, because I seen him on a couple other independent shows. And then I worked with him on in the ECW arena, and very easy to work with. And then ended up, working with him in New York, and just a really great guy in the locker room, real great family guy, not a partier,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he ever drank. I never heard of him, going, oh yeah, we went out to eat last night, had too many beers or anything, nothing like that. I knew he didn't go out,
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it was funny because he was looking, it looked like he was gonna do a little singles, right? So he was working a bunch of singles matches after the Wyatt family, and he got in great shape. I mean, great shape. And then, he's coming back a little more banged up. It's like, hey, man, don't you wish you had that cushion? It is when you lean up and stuff. But yeah, and then when he was down in AEW, it was like, looked like everything was, even firing more on all cylinders. But yeah. What a just all the times in the locker room, but great guy. It was funny one time, he goes, it was right after you worked with us on that charity show. I wrestled with you, and you worked with Joe Legend over at the Knights of Columbus in Allen Park. And anyways, it was right after I joined the Knights of Columbus, and he goes like this, he goes, I did a dad move. Everybody in the locker room's like, what's that? He goes, I bought a Buick. I pull them off. I go to the side. I go, hey, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I go, yeah, I signed up to the Knights of Columbus. So I think that trumps your Buick. Yeah, right. So yeah, he was a great guy, and it was just sadly missed. It was very unfortunate. And his one son, his middle name is Rhino. So his older brother said, okay, you could pick his middle name. And I forget if it exactly from my wrestling name or, he just knew of the name. And I think his son knew me, but he wasn't named after me. But yeah, the last WrestleMania I was there was in, I think it was in New York. But I got a picture with his son, so little Rhino, big Rhino. So, but yeah,
I know I'd met him a couple times and seemed like everything you said. Seemed like a great guy, quiet, respectful, amazing.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. It must have been the time he was getting the shape that I had met him, because he was in really, really top shape.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was never out of shape, but he was abs and everything.
Yeah. It's to his family and his fans. Like I said in my podcast, my heart goes out to everybody, because that's, I think we've reached the point in our careers where, we've seen enough of that, and I don't want to see that happen to anybody. let alone somebody that has such a bright future, right? That's a shame. Heartbreaking.
Right.
Well, we don't want to keep you too much longer. We appreciate you coming on. It's been amazing. You were great. We came down with the Insane Wrestling Revolution last year, and it's just you're a joy to see on the podcast here. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's good. I'm glad this worked too, because
right.
I'm a techno idiot when it comes to. I kept trying to download the Zoom thing, and it kept saying, are your cookies turned off? And my cookies, last I checked, my cookies were still in the oven, right? It was,
right.
So, yeah.
No, but definitely. I can't wait to these shows to start opening up again and see out there and have you back in Monroe and stuff, and definitely work with you, because like I said earlier, working with you, it's just like the promoters know they're going to get an ECW match, and the fans want an ECW match.
Right.
So,
off the subject before we get too off, Gary, at some point I'd love to sit and talk to you about. Rhino and I had talked about something a couple of days ago, and with your experience in another field, I'd like to talk to you at some point about that.
Yeah, anytime, man. You got my number.
Cool.
Yeah. So, but thank you.
I don't know what he's told you I'm experienced in, so.
Oh, you know.
Oh, I know.
I told him everything.
Man, you guys.
Right.
Hey, why don't you tell everybody about your podcast and where they can find you, and we'll close her up.
Yeah, it's the Triple Threat podcast is on Vince Russo's. What the hell's the name of his? Just if you Google Triple Threat podcast on Vince Russo's, I'm so bad with names anymore, but it's on there. And then another one called Franchise, which is on Vimeo and all the other outlets. So those keep me pretty busy. The Twitter, which I've been on my social media for months now because of all this going on, but my Twitter is @TheFranchiseSD, and Facebook, I think, is Shane the Franchise Douglas. So, just look for it. And I just signed up for Gab under the franchise Shane Douglas. So I got it right on Gab finally.
You got anything else, Terry?
No, I'm all set. So.
All right. Hey, it was great having you. I can't wait to get you back to Monroe so you can kick Terry's ass again. And he deserves it. And we'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys having me on, man. Have a great night, guys.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, Franchise.
Anytime, brother. Bye-bye.
Right. See you.
And we are done. So next week we got Raven, right? Another ECW legend.
Yeah, starting it off strong this year.
Yeah.
PDP franchise. What's that?
We have to change the name to
Then everybody will start expecting much out of us.
They don't expect nothing out of us, trust me.
Start up high and then peter down.
We'll definitely peter down.
Right. No, and then Raven, we'll talk to him. There was so much I could have kept asking him a bunch of questions and stuff about, even though we didn't get on the title and throwing the title in the dumpster and changing the name to Extreme Championship Wrestling, and then House of Hardcore and all that stuff. He stays really busy. So,
but while we're still live, we should probably talk. Maybe we could have like a ECW reunion podcast show one of these days and get a few of the guys.
Yeah, or we could do something. I know a lot of people like to do stuff like conventions and stuff like that, like the hardcore ECW stuff. But maybe we'll do something at Monroe Pop Fest.
Pop Fest ECW reunion.
Yeah, just get a few guys there, because his manager, Shane's manager, works with a lot of them. So
cool.
Yeah, he could just pick a bunch of them and then do something like that. I think the fans would like that too, because it's very rare you get the ECW guys in one place. So. Especially to be able to sign all that, So there's a lot of ECW merch out there. And plus with the network, a lot of the kids, they're being influenced by their parents. This is what I watched when I was your age.
Exactly.
So it's cool, you see the different generations.
Well, I think we're going to close it up here. I can smell the meatloaf in the background.
I got another call I got to get on. So.
But
But
Thanks for joining us. YouTube probably tomorrow will be on all the streaming services. Check out Podcast Detroit with all their great podcasts they have going on. Plus, you can see us on their YouTube page, Spotify, iHeartTunes, radios, all of them. So,
right.
Dave's there and he can get us out of here. And we will see you all next Thursday with Raven.
Right.
And cut.